welcome to Hanging by a Thread. My name is Ailsa, and this is a knitting channel where I talk about what's on my needle, the state of my yarn stash, and all things yarny to keep you company as you're crafting. So, as the somewhat clickbaity title and thumbnail maybe indicated, today we're going to be talking about my yarn stash, and specifically about a project that I'm hoping to continue through 2026 and to have as a series of videos on this channel that I'm calling Stashdown 2026. You're probably all very familiar with the idea of the Stashdown. This is when a knitter pledges to knit solely or primarily from their stash in order to reduce the size of their stash. And that is an undertaking that I want to make in the coming year. And we'll kind of talk about what's led me to this, what the current state of my stash is, and kind of some parameters that I'm making for myself about what my Stashdown 2026 is going to look like, how I want to set myself up for some success. Before we do jump in though, I will just share that today I am wearing my Anacortes sweater. This is a pattern by Michelle Frazetta of Michi Fraz Knits. This is one of my absolute favorite makes from 2025. So yeah, love this one. That's what I have on today. So I think part of what I want to share about kind of my motivation for this series and this project is the idea that I want to spend 2026 really focusing on making intentional choices and focusing on the yarn that I already have, I already love, saving some money, and also thinking about my crafting and my yarn buying habits in a broader framework of trying to break the cycle of overconsumption. It's something I think about a lot in other areas of my life, and I want to bring that same kind of framework to this project. The other just really basic motivation for this project is that my yarn stash is stressing me out. It has gotten to the size that it is now feeling unmanageable. It feels like it's making pressure on me. I feel burdened by the number of projects that I need to make in order to use up my stash. And truthfully, it's having a financial impact on me. If I keep buying endless amounts of yarn, obviously that's going to have a financial impact. And if I'm buying more yarn than I'm knitting through, I'm buying things that I don't really need right now. And yeah, you know what I'm saying. It's also causing a storage problem. We'll get to that when I give you the little tour. But I am actually, in fact, running out of space for the yarn that I have. And that is another stress factor. All of this to say, you know, just in terms of like the feeling of having future projects hanging over my head, the financial aspect, the space aspect, is adding all of this stress and anxiety into a space that's meant to be my release from stress and anxiety. Knitting is a joyful place for me. It's a very meditative thing for me. It's something that I do in order to help with my anxiety. I find that the practice of knitting, like the physical action of knitting, is something that really soothes me, and it really helps me to have something to keep my hands busy when my mind is spiraling. But now, with the state of my yarn stash, I've ended up in a position where I brought all of this stress and anxiety into what's meant to be a release from that. So we want to get away from that. We want to bring back joy and excitement and pleasure to knitting. So that's really kind of like the goal of this series, is to be excited and joyful about what I have and using what I have and celebrating accomplishments. So hopefully this isn't going to be too much of a downer. I really want to focus on those positive aspects of doing a stash down. Okay, but before I can do my stash down, we do need to face the stash. And this is where you are going to come along with me. This is going to be an exercise in transparency, as you will see the good, the bad, the ugly. It's all a bit of a mess. It is a bit chaotic. So we're going to actually look at my physical stash. We're going to kind of see some of what's in there and where I'm storing it and kind of like the out of controlness of it. And then we're going to talk through some stats because I have looked into what's in my stash and like how much I have. So we'll talk about some of those numbers. And then we'll talk about at the end my plans for the coming year for Stashdown 2026. So we're going to start off in here, but I'm going to move you over to this corner where I have the first bit of my stash. Okay, so as we come in here, we've got in this very messy corner, next to the couch, we have the first bit of my yarn stash. Sitting on top here in project bags are my current projects. And then we have a cubby underneath that has some of my stash in it. And let me see if I can find a way to show this to you a little bit more easily. Okay, we're now looking at this cubby. And funnily enough, this box used to be the entirety of my stash. When we lived in a condo downtown, all of my knitting supplies, so my yarn, my needles, my like everything to do with knitting lived in this one cubby. It's kind of wild to think about now. But you know, we lived in a one-bed condo and that's what I had space for, and that's where everything lived. So let's take a look in here right now. I'm going to say right away, none of this is going to be aesthetic or beautiful. This is real life. This is where it all lives. Okay, first up, we have a bag of ends. I hang on to ends sometimes to use as stuffing or, you know, yeah, basically I often use this for stuffing. Like if I'm making a little stuffed toy or ornament or what have you, I'll use some yarn ends. So that's what this bag is. We have here a bag for 2 different projects. So some of this yarn here is for a framed sweater by Andrea Mowry. So we have this combo was going to be for a framed sweater. And this combo, and you can see a swatch even, is for pressed flowers. I think so this Knit Picks yarn, which was going to be for a framed sweater, I am actually thinking about gifting this to my mum so that she can make that sweater, because a sweater I'm currently working on has a similar kind of vibe, and I'm not sure I'm going to want to make this for myself too. So that's possibly going to find its way to a new home. But to be determined. For now, it's still living in my stash. You can actually see I had a swatch here for the framed sweater as well. That's what that looked like. Okay. This is a project bag with just some random tools in. I think what's in here, the goal of this cubby originally was I was going to have this be where I was keeping my current whips. But it's actually turned into kind of a whip graveyard. So in here, I've got an abandoned Musselburgh hat. I also have a random skein of, I think, sock yarn here. So that should probably go somewhere else, maybe later. This is an abandoned scrappy blanket project from a couple of years ago. And this is my abandoned Cumulus tee. So yeah, this is at the moment actually kind of a whip graveyard. So maybe some of these things eventually will need to be moved to new homes, and then I can actually use this for current or upcoming projects. Okay, the next spot we're coming to is inside this sideboard cabinet. You can see my kids' craft menorah that we've been making for holidays, currently proudly displayed. There's not too much in here. At one point this was more full with stuff, but it is another bit where some stuff is being stuffed. Stuff is being stuffed. At the moment, the main thing that's in here, oh, there's some random knitting needles, there's some fabric glue, some thread. There's kind of odds and ends in here. And there's my lovely bag, my knitting project bag that my mum made me a few years ago. Actually, probably more like 10 years ago. And it's starting to feel really old and worn. It's got holes in it. So I don't use it. I don't use it as an active project bag so much anymore, but it does kind of still hold some of my tools and supplies, which is mostly what's in here. And then there's like some random skeins of like, here's some cotton yarn. Here's a swatch I did at some point. I'm not sure what even for I was swatching. Here's a leftover yarn from something else. I think these are some needle stoppers. I've got a Doodle Knit Co pack here. So there's just kind of some odds and ends in here that at some point, not right now, but at some point I should organize this and sort this out. And again, if I'm going to use this for yarn storage, I can be more intentional about how I'm using it. At the moment, there's not too much going on in here. Okay, we are now in my basement and there is even more yarn down here. I also have some fabric stash and sewing stuff going on up here, but we're not going to touch on that today. Just looking at yarn. So we can pull out what's here. Again, when we moved to this house, at one point, these 4 bins were all that I had for my stash. So I'd like kind of upgraded from that original cubby, but I only had these 4 bins. So again, you can just see that over time, my stash is like spread and spread and grown and grown. And that's, you know, part of what's causing me some problems. So in here, I have a sweater's worth of this yarn that my mum gave me. She abandoned a project and she thought I might use the yarn. Haven't yet, but would be a good idea to use this. It's a pretty nice variegated yarn. I think it's all acrylic. Is that right? It's either acrylic or a wool acrylic blend. I forget. Oh yeah, it's 60% premium acrylic, 40% superwash. So I have this here and at some point to be worked up into something. I also have in here another couple of projects worth. I have these kind of storage bags, which is where I try and put project weights into or project collections into. And this one has yarn that I so I originally bought this yarn along with this mohair to make a Salty Days sweater. And I even made a swatch for it, so you can see it does look beautiful. I've been going back and forth about whether I want to use this combination for the Salty Days. I've been kind of second guessing the color. So I'm not sure if that's still going to be it, but definitely a lovely combination of yarns, and I will still use it for something because I have a sweater quantity's worth of it. And then I also have a huge amount of this Barocco Vintage Baby in white. I think at one point I bought this thinking I was going to use this to make a blanket, and then I didn't make the blanket. And then I was like, okay, I'll make a garment. So at that point, I got some of this Rico Creative Make It Tweed, and this is the like pastel tweeds. Oh, There goes my cat. Editing Ailsa here. Earlier I was recording in the basement. I got interrupted by my cat and then my partner, and I thought I had put on back to record, but it turned out I hadn't. So I just sat there talking to myself for a little bit with some more of the yarn that was in that box you were just looking at. But that content is gone forever. So I'm going to just pop you along to the next clip, the next part of the stash tour, where we go into my office to check out the main bulk of my stash. Okay, enjoy. Okay, we now come to the truly chaotic area. It's even more chaotic because I've been doing wrapping in here and sorting of presents for the holidays. But in general, it's kind of chaotic area. I previously worked full-time from home. When I had my daughter, I worked part-time from home, and then more recently I've been doing full-time stay-at-home parenting, so I'm not using my office as much, so it has got a little bit out of control, and it has therefore become also a bit of a yarn storage room. So we can have a bit of a look at what's here. This is where actually at the moment the bulk of my stash is living. Oh, this, by the way, is I'm very slowly working on a crochet granny stripe blanket for my daughter with some, I think this is Karen cinnamon cakes, one of those ones, color changing yarn, and then some white acrylic from Michael's. So that is part of the stash. It's just living here. I work on it very occasionally. Okay, let's show you where the yarn is actually living. So this is also a very small office, so you might not be able to see very easily, but I can't move out of the way and talk to you. I've currently got most of my yarn in these two big totes. Let's see if I can even just like angle the camera so you can see it. Just because, again, I was getting really stressed out by not having room for everything. So I thought I'd get everything in these totes. They can sit under my desk. I'm not using my desk so much anymore, although I do sometimes need to use it for one or two work things I am doing. But yeah, it's organized, and then I've labeled it Yarn Stash 1 and 2. And actually on my Ravelry, I now have location of yarn populated in a lot of cases so that I know that it's in either one of these totes. So I can go to my Ravelry stash and look up where I put something. So that's what this is. We can take a bit of a look at some of the things that are in here. I'm not going to unpack these fully, but I'll maybe show you some kind of things of interest. Here I have some knitting for Olive Pure Silk that I picked up in a D-stash earlier this year. This is the color Deep Petroleum Blue. It's coming up very kind of like dark on camera, but I think that's just the lighting. It is more of a blue. So I've got 4 balls of this, so at some point this will be a lovely summer garment. I have a lot of patterns, classic wool worsted in various different colors, most of which I got in D-stash also. I've got various plans for this. So I want to make a Luma sweater. I want to make a book club cardigan I've got another color somewhere that's the kind of brown heath heather. So quite a lot of this in my stash that does have projects assigned to it. In fact, I would say most of the yarn in my stash does have projects assigned to it. It's just actually working on them. This is a recent addition to my stash. I found this at my local yarn stores. They have a yarn swap day where you can kind of drop off yarn that you're not using anymore and then pick up stuff that other people are no longer using. And then you pay like a $10 fee and the $10 goes to charity and etc. etc. So I picked this up because I thought it would be great for gift knitting. I just didn't get around to using it. It could still make a really nice gift knit. I think this would make like a lovely scarf or shawl type thing. So that's just living in the stash for now. I've got some Lion Brand 24/7 cotton that I bought to make a tank top in the summer and just didn't get around to. This is in Dragonfly, but it just the colorway is Dragonfly. I just didn't get around to making it, so again, maybe a project for next summer. I've got a sweater quantity here from Sunday Fiber Co. from their, this is from the Grand Palette collection that ran earlier this year. This color is, let's see if I can remember, Ice Age Latin is this one. This kind of like lovely desaturated green. And then this one is Scoutmaster Troop 55. This is in her Cory Wool base, which is a sport weight base, but it's woolen spun. Originally, I had thought I was going to do maybe stripes or color work of this. But I'm actually wondering if what I might do is use the green to make the Come Back Again cardigan by Andrea Mowry. I think I have enough yardage here because each of these is 450 meters. So I think I have enough to make that cardigan in just the green, and I'd find something else to do with the Scoutmaster. That's my current thinking, but if you have any ideas, I've just kind of gone off, you know, when you pre-order yarn and you have an idea and then it takes like, you know, 3 months or whatever to arrive, and then like your idea changes or like the idea you had no longer appeals so much. That's kind of what happened to me on this one. So I was really taken with the idea of doing stripes, but I'm less taken on that now. But if you have an idea that you think would use both of these colors really nicely, let me know. To be honest, most of what's in here is actually sock yarn and single skeins of sock yarn, so I'm probably not going to dig too much into that. Just because it's kind of hard and I'm causing avalanches of yarn here. But I will show you one more exciting project quantities worth of yarn before I take you back upstairs and we talk about some stats. Hopefully you've got a bit of a sense of some of what's in my stash anyway from this little exploration. But in this bag we have the yarn that I'm going to use to make my Vita cardigan, which is an all-over colorwork cardigan. It is steeked, and I picked up this Filcolana Saga. That's what the yarn looks like in various different hues. I'll put a picture up of what the Vita cardigan looks like, but is that all of them? I think there's one more. I think there's a navy too. Hang on. So yeah, this is the kind of color palette for that cardigan. So that was a recent purchase because I'm hoping to make this maybe my New Year cast on. I might be rethinking that, and we'll talk about that in my winter knitting plans video. I lied. I'm going to show you one more sock set just to honor the sock yarn that I have. I don't want to completely let it go unloved. This is from Paisley Knits. This is Don't Let Anyone Make You Disappear is the main skein, and then this is Was He a Knob? This was from their Heartbreakers collection. Is that Heartbreaker? Heartstopper. Why is the name escaping me? The really, really cute Netflix show based on the graphic novel. So I think those will make really fun socks at some point in time when I get to them. But yes, I am causing a bit of a yarn avalanche here, and the goal is to get more organized and not less. So we're going to wrap up this little section and I will meet you back upstairs. Okay, so that has given you a little bit of an insight into some of the chaos I am handling with my yarn situation. Maybe you can see a little bit about why it feels so overwhelming, especially once we get into my office. Yeah, that kind of like all of those totes under the bed are a little bit much. Under the bed, under the desk. But also, hopefully you get a little bit of a sense of, I do have some really beautiful and really special yarn to work with and that I want to work with. So yeah, you can kind of see where I'm at with having lots and lots and lots of options of beautiful things to work on, beautiful materials, and also just it being a little bit overwhelming to have quite so much all at the same time in my house. I should also say, I think that's not even actually the full extent of my stash. There's a little bit upstairs. I have some like scraps and stuff upstairs. There are another couple of like mini bags kind of dotted around the floor. So like it really is a little bit chaotic. And part of the goal over this year is, as I reduce my stash, to also like reduce the chaos, get organized. I did a whole organizing my stash video last year around the same time. Maybe this is the time of year that I start thinking about my stash. And I did get it more organized, and a lot of like that's when I kind of put projects together in bags. And but I think the reality for me is that having so much yarn and not having like places to put, you know, just odd skeins and stuff, or to organize scraps, has just left it feeling even more and more chaotic. So that's going to be part of the Stashdown project, is figuring out how I want to organize and keep my yarn. So I'm not putting pressure on myself to do that today or to figure it all out in one go. It can be part of the ongoing Stashdown 2026. So let's talk about the stats so that we can get some numbers on what's going on here. So this is based on me logging my yarn into my Ravelry stash. I think this is fairly accurate, although I'm pretty sure that there's some stuff that's not logged, and also some stuff that hasn't been taken off accurately, and that I might need to do some more going through to make sure it's, you know, accurate. But I would say it's probably like 96% accurate. So yeah, we can assume that everything is fairly accurate. It's probably, I would say, it's most likely that things are a little bit higher rather than a little bit lower. But this is a good enough approximation for me about where my stash is at. So the big reveal, here are the numbers. In my stash, I have 298.7 skeins. I'm not actually, I think that 0.7 is where I've logged on Ravelry things that are like partial skeins. And I've done it anyway. I think that's where that's coming from. I'm counting as skeins anything that is a unit of yarn. So whether it's 25 grams of mohair, 100 grams of something, 50 grams, each whole unit is a skein for the purposes of this. Within that, I have 69,943.1 yards, which is 39.7 miles. So if I were to drive the length of my stash, like that's a pretty decent drive. That would probably take me about 40 minutes. I could get to like, I mean, in Toronto, I couldn't get that far in 40 minutes, but you know what I mean? Like that's a pretty decent distance. That's like a day out kind of distance. I have in my stash at least, and possibly more because of, you know, things that like that unfinished Cumulus tea. I have at least 13 sweater quantities or garment quantities. And that was a number that really shocked me, that there are 13 sweaters or garments waiting to be made, ready to be made. So like for context, in 2025, I made 5 full-size adult sweaters, 4 short sleeve adult tops, 3 children's sweaters, and 9 socks and accessories. Preview of my everything I made, which will be coming at some point either later this month or early in the new year. So, you know, that gives you a rough estimate of how much I can knit annually. So even if I knit nothing but sweaters in 2026, I'd likely still have some sweater quantities to take me into 2027. There's more there than I can knit in a single year, realistically. I think this, like looking at that number, led me to one of the key realizations I had, is that I often get really super hyped for a new pattern release or a new to me pattern or something I've seen someone else making, I get really, really hyped. I get really excited about the idea of the project. I buy yarn for it and then it doesn't get cast on. Does that happen to anyone else? Like you're just, you're so excited about a new pattern and then you buy all the yarn and then you're like, oh, but actually I have this other project I'm working on, or I suddenly signed up for a test knit, or whatever it is that distracts you from that shiny new object, and then it's no longer a shiny new object, it's another thing sitting in your stash, but it could be shiny and new again. Anyway, do you relate? Is that something that happens to anyone else, or is that just me? So some other trends I kind of noticed. I actually realized that a lot of the indie hand-dyed yarn I've bought is the stuff that has been sitting in my stash the longest and that I don't pick up and use. I think I buy it, I'm really excited about buying the fancy yarn, and then I get it and I'm intimidated by it and I don't know what to do with it, and I feel like maybe now's not the right time, I need to wait for the right thing. Another one, a trend I've noticed that I think has contributed to the building up of my stash over time is adding on extra skeins in order to get free shipping. So, when you're close to that free shipping threshold, you're like, oh, if I just throw in like a couple of like sock yarns, I'll get over the threshold for free shipping and then I'm saving money. There's a logic to that, don't get me wrong. I can understand where I was coming from, but when I feel like I'm like overwhelmed by my stash, I don't really need to be doing that. I don't need to be adding stuff, but I'm not knitting yet. I also was aware when I was going through my stash and kind of like looking at everything that I had and looking what was in my both physical stash and my Ravelry page, that I have lots and lots of leftovers, kind of those lonely skeins, things that were parts of projects and then the whole amount didn't get used up. And so I think part of my Stashdown 2026 project is going to be a solution for those leftovers, scraps. So either doing kind of scrap busting projects, destashing, donating, but moving a lot of that out of my stash at home, to again make more space for everything else to bloom and blossom. Okay, so we've talked through the scale of my stash, the issues that I'm having, and now let's talk about how I'm going to handle my Stashdown 2026. So these are the steps that I'm going to be taking. I am having a full yarn ban in 2026. I've sung this tune before. I'm going to say it again. I know. So I think what I know for me is that if I give myself too many loopholes, I always use them. So, last year, I think I said I was going to do a yarn ban for the first 6 months, and like I broke it so fast, like ridiculously fast, because I had like some kind of loopholes built in that allowed me to justify it to myself. So yeah, doing a partial no buy, having too many loopholes just doesn't work for me. The only exceptions I'm going to make are as follows. If I need yarn in order to complete a whip. So for example, the whip I'm working on right now, I'm playing Yarn Chicken. I'm not sure if I'm going to need to pick up an extra skein in order to finish. If there's that kind of situation, then I will allow myself to buy that yarn. I was going to say maybe travel yarn, souvenir yarn. I actually think probably not. I'm probably not going to include that. Like, I don't need more yarn. Like, I just don't need more yarn right now. And there are other ways to commemorate travel and trips and occasions. So I'm going to say probably a no to travel yarn. That might be one of those loopholes that, lets me get too far beyond my goals. I'd also put for myself like maybe birthday yarn. Maybe I'm going to buy myself something for my birthday. I'm not decided on that yet. Again, there's part of me that's leaning towards the no, just don't do it. But I think what I might say for that is my birthday's in May, so we'll be 5 months into the year. It's at the end of May. And so maybe I'll have a check-in, like a really honest check-in with myself in May, like, is am I meeting my goals? Is like buying a birthday present for myself, reasonable, in line with how I'm doing, in line with how I'm feeling. So for now, I'm going to say no, but I'll have a check-in the month of May. And then finally, I'm going to say that this yarn ban is lasting the whole of 2026, unless by some miracle I work through all 13 sweater quantities of yarn and I physically cannot cast on any more garments, which is my preferred thing to make. Unless I get to that stage, I'm not buying more yarn. I'm doing a full yarn ban. So this will be a full year of going along with me, working through my stash, really stashing down. Other parts of this are to maybe do some destashing and donating, knowing that I'm not necessarily going to be physically knitting through all of this yarn myself, but finding ways to move it from my stash into other people's stashes so that other people can enjoy and use it. If it's yarn that's no longer exciting me or something I want to work with, finding someone else who wants to work with it. So that sweater quantity that I was talking about for the frame sweater that might be going to my mum, that's a good example of that. And just kind of really taking stock as I go through the year. Do I actually think I'm going to work with this, or would this be better just to let it go, make room for all of the other projects I want to make? Doing some scrappy projects, some stash busting projects, that's a big priority for the coming year. If you have your favorite stash busters, put them down below, let me know. It's not something I've done a lot of. So anything that's going to use up, kind of like odd ends or that I can do as a scrappy project, I'd love to know if you have any favorites. I'm also going to be trying to be really rigorous about tracking on Ravelry how my yarn usage is going. So tracking when things move out of stash and when I've used up quantities or when I've gifted or donated or sold some of the yarn in my stash so that I have that accurate reflection of how I'm doing, how it's going. And then I was thinking in terms of on this channel, I want to do monthly Stashdown 2026 updates to hold myself accountable to kind of bring you along for the process. So that is it. That is Stashdown 2026. If you are interested in joining in with me, even loosely, even with very different parameters than I've set out here, I'd love to know, what are your goals for your stash in the coming year? What are you most excited to work on from your stash? What are you finally planning to cast on after letting it linger in your stash for too long? I'd love to know if you have any goals or aspirations for your stash in the coming year. I look forward to sharing this journey with you and to working with all of the beautiful yarn and on all the wonderful projects that I will work on in the next year and bring you along for the process. All right, take care everyone and see you next time.